Hello, Carnivore Confessions, episode 4, 3, I don't remember. Okay. Hello everyone, it's been a while. Why didn't I upload? I just kind of didn't think I had much to say. And I'm not really investing in YouTube to hope that it's a career or hobby. Life is very busy. And so, yeah, it just sort of didn't feel as though I had much to say / time. And I don't really script these, so, that's what happened. So, okay, what's been going on? All right, so since I've been back on the carnivore train hardcore since January, when I say hardcore, I mean not allowing myself any sort of license. I'm down like 50-ish pounds, but that happened within the first 4 months, 5 months maybe, and then it just like stall city, just hanging out. And part of me was like, well, this is strange. Years ago when I first started this, after I had my ostomy surgery, it was like 18 months, and I had lost like 130 pounds, which I guess is still maybe in the trend line, but you would think in the initial time period like this, I would be dropping a little faster. Well, it's not that I'm discouraged, but I do think that there have been some things that I have done this time around that haven't been as strict. I know there are. And also, I think that maybe I've been eating a lot more food. All right. So the diet that I was doing was just carnivore. And when I say carnivore, I mean animal products, no plants, no carbohydrates from plants, or anything like that. That was all fatty meat. But I also allowed dairy, right, which is still carnivore. Okay. Eat lots of dairy. I mean, I was eating. We'll talk about what I'm doing now, and I did break through the stall with this new method. So I was eating a lot of dairy. So a typical day used to look like, eggs, bacon, all your cured meat, salami, soppressata, stuff like that, right? Sausage, ribeye, New York strip. I mean, ground beef, anything from the cow that I buy every year, which I buy a full cow, grass-fed from my local farmer every year. And I have a giant freezer, and I put it in there. It's so much cheaper per pound. My family eats beef like a couple times a week. 6 people in the family. We're eating 2 to 3 times a week. We're having a steak, ground beef, burgers, taco stuff, anything like that, meatloaf. So it makes sense to buy a cow. All right, so I was eating a lot of dairy, okay? When I say a lot of dairy, I mean like, full packages of mozzarella. I was making my own heavy whipping cream. So I make it myself. I buy the nitrous oxide, I make it, and I'll put a little Splenda in there. That's the other thing. Sugar-free sweeteners. Right, so you like your Splendas, your stevia, your aspartame, maybe even saccharin, right? Just having that all the time, right? Coffee, heavy cream and coffee, 0 sugar, 0 calorie sweeteners. I've been doing that, right? And it was like, what's the big deal? I'm losing weight initially. Okay, so one of the things that I'd been thinking about was maybe I should remove dairy. Yeah, and I was like, I'm going to do that. And I tried a few times, and it was hard. There's something strange about dairy. It feels great. It's very easy and convenient when you're busy. You're working, you have children's events, community events, church, all of those things. You're very busy. So having dairy is like one of the easiest ways to get food in. You know, wherever you go, whether it's a party, a gas station, a grocery store, you know, whatever, you probably get some cheese, right? So I would just eat cheese like it was my job, right? I'm hungry, I'm carnivore, I have an ostomy. So dairy and cheese really helps the ileostomy because it thickens up the output of the ostomy so that you're not blowing through your ostomy pouches with a ton of liquid leaking, right? So dairy tends to thicken that up depending on the type of dairy. That's a whole other video. Okay, so all that being said, I was stalling out, right? Just the same weight, up or down 3 to 5 pounds, down, up, and staying there for weeks and months. And you know, some people would say, well, you know, you're just like, your body's healing, you know, you're settling in. I was like, maybe, but I still have a lot of body fat to lose. And so while that might be true, I should be dropping body fat, not eating carbohydrates, right? Okay, so I'm like, well, maybe I should eliminate dairy, but then, you know, I also have this hernia, right? This peristomal hernia for my ostomy. And I got it repaired a while back, over a year ago. And I think it was over a year ago. It's been a little while. And the doc was like, listen, you know, you get your hernia repaired. And the reason I had to have it repaired was because I had a bowel constriction and I was, you know, not passing anything in my bag and I was dying in pain. He said, listen, you got to lose weight because this hernia is going to come back. We repaired it. They went in there. They used robot repair, so it was very minimally invasive. And they stitched it up a lot, right? And it hurt. It was bad. It was very uncomfortable. Okay, so when I did that, a couple weeks went by, I felt fine. The hernia reoccurred within a few months. It popped out again right above my stoma, you know, kind of softball size almost. I wouldn't say, maybe tennis ball size. I even went back to the hospital once and a few months ago just to because I felt really bad. The hernia was there. I was afraid that maybe it was constricting again, if there was a problem, and no, it was just sort of gastritis, right, with a little bit of discomfort. But I still have the hernia, right? So hernia's back, okay? I had a CT scan. I went back to the doctor just to have him take a look at it, and he was like, listen, you got to lose weight, right? So that was quite a few months ago. And it was like, yeah, okay, I got to lose weight. That's true. And I agree, right? Okay, so, and I was like, well, I am. I'm carnivore. I'm losing weight. I wasn't losing weight. Okay, so fast forward to now. What's changed? How have I broken through this stall? I have adopted carnivore, but lean protein. So I've been doing a protein-sparing modified fast, effectively, for over a week. It's worked. I have been dropping weight, right? I've lost 5 pounds in a week. That it broke through the stall. Is it sustainable? I hope so. It's very strange. I've never done this before. So we're protein sparing modified fast. It's lean protein. A gram per body weight of lean body mass that you want to maintain. Maybe 1.5 grams max. So if let's say you want to be 180 pounds, it's 180 grams of protein. Maybe a little more. And a lot of people, men, decent size, will probably eat about 200 grams of protein a day. There's a lot of science, evidence-based nutrition from guys like Lyle McDonald who will talk about the amount of protein you should eat, but it seems to be, 1.8 grams per body pound, per pound of body mass, or up to maybe even 1.5 grams, 1.8 grams. Okay, so I've been eating roughly 180 grams to 200 grams of protein per day, lean protein, with very trace fats. The trace fats come from meat that has fat in it. So if I'll eat chicken breast, there may be a very trace amount of fat in there. Turkey, lean beef, right? But the majority of my diet right now is not beef, because it's very hard to maintain a low level of fat with beef. Even with the grass-fed beef that I have, it's tough to do, right? The grass-fed beef is still going to have more fat. So the volume of food you would be able to eat would be lower, which is hard, because especially for me, I can't really have vegetables. If I were to eat roughage or vegetables, number one, I don't believe they're ideal from a carnivore standpoint. But number two, like with an ostomy, roughage vegetables are very hard on digestion. It's difficult because you'll bloat, and it could potentially cause a blockage, which has happened to me anytime I've tried vegetables in the past. It just really causes discomfort and a blockage, meaning you don't pass anything in your ostomy, which becomes extremely painful. Like it's one of the worst pains ever. So I've been eating carnivore lean protein. So what does that include? Chicken breast, turkey, egg whites, protein shakes that are meat-based, which is really only one, I use Mark Bell's Steak Shake, which has a couple of trace carbs and a few grams of fat, which is pretty normal. Whey protein would work. So that is the bulk. And then I have also, so I've not been eating dairy, but I was like, well, Greek yogurt is 0 fat, very few carbs, lots of protein. I try and keep that to a small amount per day, right? So it's like a cup, maybe a cup and a half of Greek yogurt, 0 fat. I like Fage. Shout out Fage. They're amazing. It's some of the best Greek yogurt there is. The texture's great. There's no fat. Tastes good. You're not going to get any kind of strange texture there. It's just well done. And so I put the Steak Shake protein powder into the Greek yogurt and I mix it up. So this has been working. I have done fasting in the past, right? So like 3 days, 5 days, 7 days of, even 9 days of water fasting with electrolytes. This is like that. I feel similar to fasting sometimes during the days. Now on this diet, they recommend, and I also do anyway, electrolyte supplementation. So I buy fasting salts in a bag. I don't buy your LMNT. I used to buy snake juice. This is cheaper. It's got the right ratios: magnesium, potassium, sodium. I take that, I put it in a cup, mix it up with 16 ounces of water, maybe I think like close to a liter sometimes I'll do as well. And drink that, sip that throughout the day. And I'll do that about 4 of those a day, which is 3 to 4 a day, which is not small. That's actually kind of tough to get in. When you get that electrolyte in, it really does help you get through the hunger. There's something interesting that happens with whether it's the volume in the gut of the water or it's the hormonal change. Maybe the electrolytes help fuel your hormones that tell you to eat. Maybe it gives you like a sense of satiety. Not really sure why that works so well. Still drink coffee. I am still also doing alternative sweeteners. I will cut those out if it seems like I'm unable to sustain the weight loss. That will be the first thing to go. So I use like 0 sugar, 0 carb, 0 fat creamer in coffee. Or I'll allow a tiny amount of half and half, which is like a few grams of fat, to make a latte. So I'll actually water it down and steam it, make an espresso and latte. So if I find that like the weight loss is stalling, I may reduce the amount of sweeteners that I'm having, and also I'll tighten up on the fat grams that are coming in, which are still very minimal. We're talking 10, 15 grams of fat a day, max. Why am I doing this? I want to lose weight faster because I want to get this hernia addressed, because it's really difficult to do any kind of resistance training when you have a peristomal hernia, it's one thing to have a hernia when you have like a normal bowel, but if in my case it's right by the output, and a constriction's much more common with an ostomy, and so if I get that hernia and it constricts, it's gonna be horrendous, right? You're gonna get the worst pain. It's definite hospital visit. It's a serious thing, and so resistance training's tough because you engage your abdominals with so many exercises, and then when you put strain, inner abdominal pressure, you're going to get a potential problem with a hernia, especially a peristomal hernia. So my exercise routine is limited to just walking. And as far as losing weight is concerned, moving is important, but diet's like 85% of that problem, 80%, maybe more. This has been pretty much agreed upon by most. Moving has a whole other set of benefits with regard to mood and stability, but I don't think I'm going to like flatten out on weight loss because I'm not resistance training as much. And I do protein sparing modified fast does emphasize resistance training or Lyle McDonald's rapid fat loss routine and things like that. But we're also talking about someone who's pretty large like me who has a lot of body fat to lose. It's less of an issue. So to wrap it all up, carnivore confession, I don't know, and it's probably true. If you listen to a lot of your carnivore advocates, dairy is the culprit for lack of weight loss. I mean, an emphasis, too much dairy seems to, and it, in my experience, potentially be the culprit for stalling out. It's extremely convenient, especially for someone who can't get a lot of volume in with other things, with an ileostomy, and it helps out the output. So it's very hard to moderate dairy. I think there's been some loose research that claims dairy has the same effect on the body and brain as opioids. I'm not entirely sure what that research says, but it's possible that the addictions, when I say addiction, like the cravings are so strong in the dairy realm because of that. It could also just be because you're hungry. When you're not eating a lot of volume and you're used to eating, or you go to events and you want to be social, you might just be hungry. So both those things probably true. And so this scenario is harder in some sense because you are eating, but you feel like you're fasting a little bit. So, really you're kind of seeing protein as almost a supplement, like a vitamin or something like that. It's a little higher than that, but you know what I mean? You don't feel extremely satiated. Like you're not eating much, and you're not feeling like you would feel with true carnivore. So we're trying this out to see if I can break through this stall, see how long I can last on this protein sparing modified fast. The plan is to kind of go maybe 2 weeks at a time. There's a lot of research that says you should go like 7 days, 5 days, 3 days, depends how much body fat you have to lose. I think once you push it for months at a time, you start to be concerned with diet fatigue, stalling out, and potentially clinical problems. When people do a protein sparing modified fast and they're obese, they're usually in a hospital setting and they're doing like liquid diet, IV supplementation / electrolyte supplementation, and they're being monitored. So I think in this scenario, when you're doing it at home, you probably want to cycle in some fats once in a while. And so for my purposes, I am having a little fat in the diet, right, with your heavy cream, or your half and half, and maybe your Greek yogurt. Very little though, right, like tiny. So that may help, but I'm trying to run this like 5 days on, 2 days fat days, or 2 weeks on and 3 to 5 days fat days. But even on the fat days, still not dairy. So when I say fat days, I mean you add in egg yolks, maybe you'll have a ribeye, some fattier beef, just for a couple of days, you would do that. It's gonna bump calories up. It's gonna bump your fat calories up. Your carbs are still zero or close to zero, and that may help the diet fatigue. It may help the hormonal and electrolyte issues. It may help your energy. I do know that some people will do a fat day when they're training. Me, in my case, the resistance training is really on the back burner. So it's really, for me, it would be more for sustainability and potentially like to avoid clinical issues. So that's the goal. Go for 5 days on, 2 days fat days, maybe go 2 weeks, then 3 to 5 days after that, some fat days. I'll tell you, the difficulty with that is like staying on the wagon. So you say, well, I'm off the wagon now, I'm just gonna eat fat, I don't need to go back to protein sparing modified fast. That's the part where this sort of trains your discipline, which is do the thing, do the protein sparing modified fast. If you have to eat some fat, don't let it take you off the rails, and then come back to protein sparing modified fast until you get your leanness that you want. And then I would assume once you get your leanness, once you're lean enough, you will just have a normal carnivore diet where you eat plenty of fat, you'll resistance train, and it's normal life. So this is a pretty long carnivore confession video. I don't know how useful these things are to people, but good for me to document this. And we will see how all of this goes. I'm very hopeful. At the very least, this is a short-term period to get through this stall, and it's also creating the discipline to eliminate that dairy. So that's my hope here, and hopefully this is helpful to people. Have a good day.